After Daniel Ricciardo's issues with McLaren continued this weekend, today we're going to be looking at what is wrong with Daniel Ricciardo. Now, to do this, firstly, we need to look at what's happened this season compared to Lando Norris. Now, in qualifying, Daniel Ricciardo has actually out-qualified Lando Norris 3 times compared to the 2 times that Norris has out-qualified him. However, on the occasions that Norris has out-qualified Ricciardo, in Portugal and in Monaco, it has been by a large margin. By 1.1 seconds in Portugal and 9 positions, and by 7 positions and 0.9 seconds in Monaco. This suggests that when he is not comfortable with the car, Daniel Ricciardo finds it very difficult to extract any pace compared to Lando. Now in the races, Daniel Ricciardo has finished ahead of Lando Norris in only one of the 5 races so far this season. That was in Spain, where Daniel Ricciardo out-qualified Lando Norris and finished ahead of him in the race. Now after Spain, a lot of the Formula 1 community, including myself, thought that Daniel Ricciardo had got up to speed with the McLaren and was now going to be able to match and possibly beat Lando Norris. However, in Monaco, it was a completely different story. He was 1 second off Lando Norris in qualifying and finished 9 positions behind him and got lapped by his teammate Lando Norris, which is quite embarrassing. In the first 2 races of the season, Daniel Ricciardo out-qualified Lando Norris by 1 position. However, he finished 4 positions behind Lando Norris in Bahrain and 3 positions behind him in Imola. In the third race of the season in Portugal, Ricciardo managed to gain 8 positions from his starting position of 16th to get up to 9th, which showed that he had got up to speed with the car, but it just took him a bit longer than Norris over the course of the weekend. Now after that came Spain, where he out-qualified and beat Norris in the race. This seemed to show that he had finally got to grips with the McLaren car and was ready to take the fight to Lando Norris. However, as we've already discussed, Monaco went a completely different direction. He finished a second behind Norris in qualifying and got lapped by his teammate in the race.
Asking kids if they've got cameras. Okay, are we ready for the first? Hello, geeks. Hello. Yeah, mate.
Now the big question is, if and when will Daniel Ricciardo get up to speed with this McLaren? And to do this, we need to look back at different times when he's joined new teams. Now his first team in Formula 1 was HRT, which he joined halfway through a season, which is quite similar to this season, as the cars are quite similar to last season, so Norris has already driven this car pretty much. First race that he did in HRT, he qualified 0.6 seconds behind his teammate Liuzzi and finished 1 lap behind him. In the second race of the season, he almost out-qualified his teammate and was only a quarter of a tenth behind him, but in the race, his teammate retired, so we can't really have a good comparison of them. Third race, he was again a tenth off his teammate qualifying, and in the race, finished a lap ahead of Liuzzi, so he'd started to get up to speed with the car. The fourth race in Belgium, he actually finished 1.4 seconds behind his teammate in qualifying and didn't make the 107% rule, but because it was in wet conditions, he was still allowed to race. However, he did retire early on in the race. However, he was running 16th with his teammate in 20th when he did retire, again showing his pace over his teammate as the season went on. In his 5th race in Italy, he again out-qualified his teammate by 0.2 seconds, but he couldn't get off the line, so we can't really compare the race. After the first 5 races, he consistently beat his teammate in both qualifying and the race, which showed that he had eventually got up to speed with the car, and he is a good driver and beat Liuzzi. Now in his second season, he joined Toro Rosso. He was alongside Jean-Eric Vergne, who had also joined Toro Rosso for that season, and they were both pretty evenly matched throughout the whole season. So you can't really compare the two because they're both new and pretty evenly matched. So we don't really know how quick he got up to speed with the car, but it was the same speed as Jean-Eric Vergne. And when he went to Red Bull, he got up to speed very quickly. In the first race, he got on the podium but was disqualified. He didn't finish the second race. But in the next 7 races that he finished, he beat Vettel in all of them. And bearing in mind, Vettel had just won the last 4 championships in a row. So he'd really got up to speed quickly with that car. And he didn't have any issues. Now, when he joined Renault, which is probably the one that we compare most to because it was most recent and it was this era of cars. He was initially quite even with his teammate Nico Hulkenberg, and as the season progressed, he got better and better and beat Nico Hulkenberg in the championship in his first season with Renault. So if you look back through history, there's not a lot to suggest that Daniel Ricciardo wouldn't be able to get up to speed with a McLaren. So the only really explanations I can think of is that either he's just not doing very much simulator work, in which case he needs to do more, or the car's been designed around Lando Norris and it doesn't suit his driving style, much like we've seen with Red Bull and the second driver seat there. However, Carlos Sainz was there last season and he did fine against Norris and was probably the team leader until he decided that he was going to leave. So in summary, we can't really tell what is wrong with Daniel Ricciardo, but we know that there's something wrong because he's not that much slower than Lando Norris, and in most people's opinion, including mine, he's a better driver. And if you saw my pre-season predictions video, you'll know that I thought he was going to beat Lando Norris pretty convincingly. So that really rounds up the video. Comment down below what you think's wrong with Daniel Ricciardo. Please subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.